Welcome back to Real Repairs for Real Live Customers. We're going to feature a dash repair today that is very typical of the kinds of dash repairs we see nowadays. The old type of major rebuilding kind of dash repairs we don't see anymore at all, really. And that work is heavy duty anyway, like body work, so who wants to do that? But the requests that I get more often from colleagues in the business is about this kind of dash repair that we're going to feature today. And we're going to include some examples of many vehicles in which you'll find this same repair applicable. Now, I can't talk about the dash repair without including something about the customer. The customer comes from a town where people like to talk. So whenever I get a call from there, I cringe a little bit because I know there's an investment in time before we ever get around to the repair. They want to talk about the whole history of the car, the history of the family, the pets, and you have to go through this before you finally get down to discussing the arrangements for repairing. So, as a matter of fact, let me tell you this little story quick. I took a trainee to one of the dealerships there. We went into the dealership, and I'm talking to the owner again about how the family's doing, how the kids are doing in school, and so forth. And then he finally gets around to ask me, "What did you find?" Well, I had a list of vehicles that needed repairing. So he says, "Okay, go do all those." So then when we get out to the van, the trainee says, "Man, we just wasted all that time in there." I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I just taught you one of the most valuable lessons in life, and it went right over your head. Did you want to do this list of cars or not?" But the people there, they have a reputation in that town and in the surrounding countryside of being salt of the earth kind of people. They just require an investment of time. And the lady customer that we're talking about here is just the nicest person, talkative like people are there, and it adds a little bit of humor to our story. So let's get to work. The first thing I wanted to do was match the color. I don't know how evident it is here in this picture, but the color is very close to black. However, on my first color attempt, I could see where there was some brown involved in this black. Also, the finish needed to be a matte finish. So by adding some brown and some flattener, it actually made the color a bit light. I simply boosted the black again, and I'm going to be confident that that's going to work. So this lady met me at a dealership that I was working at, and so she called the dealership for directions. So then when I got to the dealership, all the people there are like, "Ooh, a lady's calling to meet you." So at least the day started with everybody in a good mood. Now, since the customer was meeting me an hour away from her home, she used that occasion to get her car serviced locally at the Infiniti dealership earlier in the day, and she had a 4-hour wait for that service. So by the time she met me, I realized, wow, what a patient person. So I commended her on that, and then I assured her that if she was patient a little while longer, her patience would be rewarded. She could sit on the couch in the showroom, but she could come out and see my progress anytime she wanted to. And as I found out later, she was so talkative that the whole staff there enjoyed having her in the showroom the whole time. So for this repair, we're doing the old glue and sand trick. That is sanding while our medium super glue is still damp. The reason for dabbing is so that we remove all excess glue and we just have glue remaining down in the scratch. 220 grit is the sandpaper of choice here, and the object, of course, is to get the sanding dust to settle into the damp glue. That acts as a filler, and it sets it up pretty quick. Now I'm using a probe to transfer the glue just to keep it extremely localized, but you can also use a pipette that you can stick into the end of the glue container and dispense just drop at a time. But this way it's even a smaller amount than a drop at a time, and I can keep it localized. In other words, it's best not to pour the glue directly from the container on a repair of this nature. So with a very minimal effort, we are filling in the scratch while at the same time sanding down those raised edges. And apparently I'm sampling the color on my finger. And of course a bit of color for a guide coat. Now on close examination, if there are any high spots at all, which I was hoping by this method there wouldn't be any, I can sand and feather that also with the 220. So this is in real time, so you get the idea of how much attention to detail I'm putting on this to make sure that every place where the scratch was, it's perfectly flattened out, it's perfectly leveled out. So this few minutes will really pay off on the final look of our repair. And coming up, I will show you a close-up from my point of view while I'm working. So we've been able to keep our repair localized with very little damage to any of the surrounding texture. And you may have noticed this extra scratch over here, which no one saw previously. But we need to get it. And we don't have to mask off the glove box. We can simply open it up and put a drop cloth right in there. We got it that far, and this is the, it's coming along actually quicker than I anticipated.
I appreciate it, buddy.
And
I'm glad.
so this
You're
is
better than the Infiniti people.
this is where I'm
Look at you.
blending. I'm going to blend some texture, okay?
Oh,
I'm keeping it to a very minimum here at first. And
I ain't gonna stand over you.
ah,
You're doing too good.
right. So this is a look at the spray texture before sanding. And because we have such a subtle texture here, I'm using 600 grit sandpaper instead of the usual 400. So from another vantage point here, our first texture coat having been sanded with 600. We've got a good start. Now we want to blend a little wider. I want to put a little extra masking down. Now for a light blend of texture over the whole piece. As I get ready to sand this texture step, think about the fact that our texturing is also self-leveling, or self-contouring, we could say. The high texture is going to get topped off. Any low-lying texture is not going to be affected. But if we retexture in the low-lying areas, we'll bring those up so that they'll be shaved off the same as the surrounding texture. So it's self-leveling or self-contouring. And the base I'm using here is the plastic coater. It is the one product that dries right away and stands up strong and tall so that we can sand the tops flat. And by contrast, if we had used the solvent aerosol textures, they would remain soft for some time, and we would have to wait before reworking our repair. Otherwise, we would just gum up the sandpaper. I recall one job where I had to allow everything to cure overnight before I could sand on it, and coming back the next day, I realized that the solvent texture had laid down overnight and it was only about half the texture I started with. And if we compare with the thick water-based texture products, they will dry on the surface, leaving a skin. Well, the skin acts like a lid on the container and keeps everything underneath soft and liquid. So when we sand it, the skin comes off and the liquid pours out. So the products we used to try to get by with in the past are now obsolete. Here I'm adding a atomized color step to see how everything is going to blend in. Sorry if I'm seeming a little bit nitpicky here, but I want to put one more texture step blending right over our repair area, drying as we go. Of all my repairs, this is the highest ticket item, these dash repairs. So it pays to put the extra effort into making sure we're as close to 100% as we can get. So when I finished and the lady paid me, she said, "You know, you didn't sound that handsome on the phone." And I thought to myself, do I sound that bad? So after she left, I told the salespeople that, and they had more ammunition to pick on me again. It's a laugh a minute around here. Now here my paint gun is going to be out of frame, because this is the overall color, and I will be holding the gun back about a foot away from the surface to get that blend we're looking for. So I asked our most pleasant customer if she would be patient for one more minute so I could take this one final picture to get the end results. And I wanted to briefly show you other vehicles that use this exact same procedure to fix common dash problems. This car is for one of the luxury car dealerships. And while I was working on this one, I was working on another one right beside it. So working both jobs at the same time. Two high-ticket items at the same time. This is the second one where we had the soft touch finish removed from this bracket. Feathered with 220 and colored to match. This was for a retail customer. The new windshield could get put in because we still had access. And here I'm sanding the texture with 600 again. It's a very subtle texture. Thankfully, they knew enough to leave the windshield out for this repair, but look what they did. They've glued on the cut-off piece, but smeared glue into the dash. So this is a rule for foam-backed vinyl. When you have a piece cut off, do not put it back in. It will always remain raised up and you can't sand it down. It's too rubbery. Leave the piece out and fill the void with something you can sand, which in this case could be a super glue. Leading to the next rule. Dissimilar materials sand at different rates. In this case, the foam-backed vinyl will sand hardly at all, whereas the more firm filler will sand readily. So in order to get everything the same contour, we would have to spread our glue a little wider than the hole. That way the final sanding is on the same material. And remember, our texture step is self-leveling or self-contouring. My magnetic light would not stick on this Ford F-150 because the body is made of aluminum or aluminium, depending on where you're from. But the dash must be made of unobtainium because it's on national backorder with no ETA. So this dash has to be fixed like new before the rest of the vehicle can be repaired. And a tree fell on it, so you can imagine the extent of the damages on this vehicle. Well, I hope you found that repair beneficial. There's certainly something in there that I'm sure you can use to your advantage. We used very little product. The adhesive that we used is immeasurable. We used a quarter sheet of 220 grit sandpaper, a quarter sheet of 600 grit sandpaper. We used about an ounce of color, the plastic coater, which was also our texturing product. Out of the same gun. How convenient is that? We simply have to dial the size by turning our pressure regulator to dial the size of texture we want. And then to get the final good atomization, we just up the pressure to do that. So that's so convenient. There's no need to be purchasing a large number of different aerosol or otherwise texture products. So we can stop listening to the person that's trying to sell us the products wherever he is. Why? Because that person is not experiencing the whole scenario, the whole circumstance of the repair world that we as field technicians are experiencing. It's a whole new paradigm today, isn't it? We have the parts shortage, so we have customers demanding of us that the piece that we're working on looks like brand new. It has to look like OEM. So the old sloppy mop bucket kind of repairs that folks tried to get away with in years past, it's not going to pass muster today, is it? There's higher expectations all the way around. So it's this entire circumstance of repairs that we need to listen to. Our repair is shouting at us to raise our skills to a level never before demanded of us in our industry until today. And it's even a struggle to keep up with it, but we have a lot of fun doing it. Thanks for watching.